For the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. I will be presenting the subcommittee report for the Nevada Department of Corrections. The Joint Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation has completed its review of the Department of Corrections budgets for the 23-25 biennium. The closing recommendations of the subcommittee resulted in general fund appropriation reductions of $12.4 million in fiscal year 2024 and $14.3 million in fiscal year 2025. However, as discussed later in this closing, approximately $12.5 million of the identified reductions in fiscal year 2025 are recommended to be budgeted in the Interim Finance Committee contingency account to be available to the department under certain circumstances, and as such do not reflect savings at this time. The following comments describe the more significant recommendations of the Joint Subcommittee.
Diversity and equity needs.
The executive budget provided funding to house an average of 10,497 offenders in fiscal year 2024 and 10,668 offenders in fiscal year 2025, based on the offender population projections received from the JFA Institute in October 2022. The subcommittee recommended funding to house an average of 10,223 offenders in fiscal year 2024 and 10,480 offenders in fiscal year 2025, based on revised offender population projections updated in February 2023, which is an increase of 82 offenders in fiscal year 2024 and 339 offenders in fiscal year 2025 as compared to the fiscal year 2022 average actual offender population. For the department overview, the subcommittee recommended approval of adjustments to average annual offender population caseloads as included in the executive budget, an increase of 82 offenders in fiscal year 2024 and 339 offenders in fiscal year 2025 as compared to the fiscal year 2022 average actual offender population. For the department overview, the subcommittee recommended approval of adjustments to average annual offender population caseloads as included in the executive budget, which updated offender-driven expenditures at each institution and the offender store fund and the inmate welfare account, and resulted in net reductions in general fund appropriations of $2.2 million and $810,317 in other funds over the 23-25 biennium. In addition, the subcommittee recommended approval of $1.5 million in general fund appropriations for inflationary cost increases for food consistent with the population adjustments. And finally, the subcommittee recommended approval of transferring the cost of operating law libraries and 14 administrative assistant positions to the budget at each facility at which a law library is located, and $2.2 million in restricted general fund appropriations to fund the law libraries, resulting in a corresponding reduction of $2.2 million in transfers from the offender store fund to the inmate welfare account. For the Director's Office, the subcommittee recommended approval of a budget amendment for $25,000 in general fund appropriations each year over the 23-25 biennium for advertising and marketing to assist with the department's recruitment efforts. For prison medical budget 3706, the subcommittee recommended general fund appropriations of $3.9 million over the 23-25 biennium to fund adjustments to the offender-driven medical care costs based on inflation and updated offender population projections. In addition, the subcommittee recommended approval of one new pharmacy technician position to assist the department's pharmacies with prescription order fulfillment as a result of licensing 6 additional pharmacies. For the Warm Springs Correctional Center budget account 3716, the subcommittee recommended approval of the department's proposal to continue the temporary closure through fiscal year 2024 and fund maintenance of the Warm Springs Correctional Center facility over the 23-25 biennium to include a total of 13 maintenance and correctional officer positions totaling $4.4 million in general fund appropriations, and recommended appropriating an additional $10.8 million in restricted general funds to the IFC contingency account for the phased reopening of the facility beginning fiscal year 2025, which would require the department to demonstrate to the IFC that it has filled vacant positions or is in the process of filling vacant positions, and that it can effectively and safely reopen the facility without compromising the operations of the currently open facilities. Correctional officer positions totaling $4.4 million in general fund appropriations, and recommended appropriating an additional $10.8 million in restricted general funds to the IFC contingency account for the phased reopening of the facility beginning fiscal year 2025, which would require the department to demonstrate to the IFC that it has filled vacant positions or is in the process of filling vacant positions, and that it can effectively and safely reopen the facility without compromising the operations of the currently open facilities prior to receiving an allocation of the funds. For the Humboldt Conservation Camp budget 3741, the subcommittee recommended approval of the department's recommendation to close the Humboldt Conservation Camp, maintain the facility in mothball status over the 23-25 biennium, and continue the funding for 10 currently filled positions for fiscal year 2024, resulting in a reduction of $2.3 million in general fund appropriations and $25,240 in other funds over the 23-25 biennium, with the intent that the camp be permanently closed. For the Ely Conservation Camp budget account 3747, the subcommittee recommended approval of the governor's recommendation to continue the closure of the Ely Conservation Camp and maintain the facility in mothball status over the 23-25 biennium, resulting in a reduction of $2.7 million in general fund appropriations, with the intent that the camp be permanently closed. In addition, the subcommittee recommended the issuance of a letter of intent directing the department to provide a report to the IFC by June 1st, 2024 on the status of the Conservation Camp Consolidation Plan for the 25-27 biennium, including, but not limited to, information on the department's ability to appropriately staff each camp, a visual representation of the timeline to consolidate, repurpose the facilities, and or transfer the facilities to another entity. For the Tonopah Conservation Camp Budget Account 3754, the subcommittee recommended approval of the department's recommendation to close the Tonopah Conservation Camp, maintain the facility in mothball status over the 23-25 biennium, and continue the funding for 6 currently filled positions for fiscal year 2024, resulting in a reduction of $2.7 million in general fund appropriations and $29,344 in other funds over the 23-25 biennium, with the intent that the camp be temporarily closed. In addition, the subcommittee recommended allocating up to $1.7 million in general fund appropriations to the IFC contingency account for distribution to the department should it determine that the camp is to be reopened during the 23-25 biennium. The subcommittee recommends closing the following Department of Corrections budgets as included in the executive budget and consistent with the subcommittee's closing actions taken with the Department of Corrections overview closing and the joint full committee's action during the statewide decision units closing where statewide grade increases were considered with technical or no adjustments. Correctional Programs Budget 1013711. Ely State Prison Budget 1013751. High Desert State Prison Budget 1013762. Northern Nevada Correctional Center Budget 1013717. Nevada State Prison Budget 1013718. Southern Desert Correctional Center Budget 1013738. Lovelock Correctional Center Budget 1013759. Southern Nevada Correctional Center Budget 1013715. Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center, Budget 1013761. Casa Grande Transitional Housing, Budget 1013760. Northern Nevada Transitional Housing, Budget 1013724. Stewart Conservation Camp, Budget 1013722. Pioche Conservation Camp, Budget 10113.
On the Warm Springs Correctional Facility, in the subcommittee's recommendation, there's a $10.8 million to be placed in the restricted general funds IFC contingency account to reopen that facility. And if we look back at our backup documents on page 58 and 59, we've heard about the huge vacancies that we currently have in DOC. To reopen these facilities, I think it would take a minimum of 74 full-time positions, but to get it to where it really would need to be is 94. So that would be 94 officers in addition to the current vacancies that we currently have. I can completely support the $4.4 million for the mothballing and making sure that those 13, the maintenance and the corrections officer's position to keep this facility open for future use. I just have a hard time wrapping my mind around us being able, even with the amazing compensation package we put together, hiring those 94 people to justify placing almost $11 million in a restricted general fund IFC account. And then going over to the Tonopah Conservation Camp, I have some of the same concerns. This camp's been closed for a while, but we do need to maintain the $2.7 million for those 6 currently filled positions that are there. But the 1.7 in anticipation that camp's going to be open in this next biennium, I just don't see us getting there with the numbers. We do have, in previous budgets, we moved positions from making them firemen that would be here. I'm just not sure if we need that funding. If we could just have a little discussion on that before having a vote, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion on this? Senator Gokuchian?
I just want to get clear what the Vice Chair, are you talking about shifting the 1.7 million then out of this budget for Tonopah that we had allocated? We're going to hold it in a contingency.
That would be my recommendation. We would keep the money for the mothballing of it, the 2.7, but it's been closed for, 2 sessions now? Do we really believe we're going to be able to hire those people and keep that money there?
Well, it's been closed for a session, but again, our hopes were, and again, depending on, Madam Chair, if I may, depending on, what happens, especially with the NDF and the possibility then that we could use that camp, and in fact, but those 2 budgets haven't come together yet. We continue to hope that there will be at least the ability to mothball the camp. Maybe we don't need the total 2.7, but with NDF, if they can backfill and put us at least part of a professional crew in the Tonopah camp area, both to do habitat work and wildland fire suppression. But again, these will be paid, so it will take the money from somebody.
Then with that, Madam Chair, I would move for approval for this closing report, but removing the $10.8 million from the Warm Springs Correctional Center for that money to be placed into general fund and keeping the Tonopah Conservation Camp as read by staff.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Second from Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Gocuccia, please.
No, I think I could agree with that. It's my understanding that I know Warm Springs here is going to be taken care of, and so I'm good with that. Tonopah is my major concern, so I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And seeing no more discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much for your time. And I believe next is Ms. Johnston. When you're ready, please go ahead.
Of the committee, Nicolette Johnston, Fiscal Analysis Division for the record. I will be presenting the Joint Subcommittee closing report for the Department of Wildlife. The Joint Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation has completed its review of the Department of Wildlife budget recommendations in the executive budget for the 23-25 biennium. The closing recommendations of the subcommittee resulted in no increase or decrease in general fund appropriations when compared to the governor's recommended budget. The subcommittee recommended approval of the following closing actions. Director's Office, Budget Account 4460. As recommended by the governor, the subcommittee recommended approval of transfers of sportsmen's revenue of $165,977 in FY 2024 and $198,173 in FY 2025 for 3 new accounting assistant positions to support the Fiscal Services Unit due to additional workload as a result of an increase of federal grant awards over the past several years. The subcommittee also recommended approval of Budget Amendment A230754460 to add 1 new unclassified deputy director position funded through transfers of sportsmen's revenue of $143,743 in FY 2024 and $174,713 in FY 2025 as recommended by the governor. Conservation Education Budget Account 4462. The subcommittee recommended approval of cost allocation reimbursements totaling $104,000 in each year of the 23-25 biennium to fund a marketing and outreach campaign to attract potential new hunters and anglers to Nevada as recommended by the governor. Law Enforcement Budget Account 4463. The subcommittee recommended approval of transfers of voting registration revenue in the amount of $68,324 in each year of the 23-25 biennium to restore and augment funding for the boating safety outreach program as recommended by the governor. Fisheries Management, Budget Account 4465. The subcommittee recommended approval of a transfer of sportsmen's revenue of $260,000 in FY 2024 to fund the refurbishment of the air coil cooling tower at the Mason Valley Fish Hatchery, as recommended by the governor, and further advised the agency to request this type of project as a capital improvement program project in the future. The subcommittee recommended approval of a technical adjustment to establish revenue and expenditure authority of coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds totaling $2.3 million in FY 2024 and $779,875 in FY 2025 to continue funding the Lake Mead Fish Hatchery water supply line project. The subcommittee recommended approval of all other closing items within the Department of Wildlife budgets as recommended by the governor with technical adjustments noted by staff and consistent with the decision of the joint full committees in the closing hearing of the statewide decision units, where statewide compensation adjustments were considered. The subcommittee further authorized fiscal staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. The subcommittee recommended closing the following Department of Wildlife budgets as recommended by the governor with technical adjustments as noted by fiscal staff. Data and Technology Services, Budget 4461. Game Management, Budget 4464. Diversity Division, Budget 4466. Habitat, 4467. And Madam Chair, that concludes this report.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on this? If not, I will accept a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve this closing report as read by staff.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno, second by Senator Canizaro. Any discussion on this motion? I'd love to say something clever here, but we've had a long morning, so with that, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much.